Amujibu. Thank you so much. It's good to see you back here at Chungwa House. Maybe I should say Happy New Year. We have not seen each other here for a long time. So before you is a caucus of the Azimio One Kenya Alliance Members of Parliament. We have a statement here that we are going to read in turns because we want it to be clear and understood by the audience, that is the Kenyan people. So I will start off here with me. Mheshimiwa Nabina Bwera is the Member of Parliament for Lugari. Then we have Mheshimiwa Anthony Oluoch, he's a Member of Parliament for Madare constituency. Jared Okelo, Member of Parliament for Nyando in Kisumu. Mheshimiwa Enoch Wambua is the Senator for Kitui and also the Deputy Minority Leader in the Senate. And of course Mheshimiwa Sam Atandi, the Member of Parliament for Alego Usonga. So we'll take turns reading this statement. It is fairly lengthy and detailed, but we wish that you be patient with us. So the statement is titled, "Where is the bottom, Bwana Ruto?" Where is the bottom? Ladies and gentlemen, we come before you as a caucus of the Azimio One Kenya Alliance, drawn from both houses of Parliament, who have seen the need to seek answers on pressing economic and governance matters on behalf of the citizens of Kenya. We have a shared concern that Kenyans are being lied to and taken round in circles, particularly on the issue of the economy. While we will continue participating in the public barazas where the issue is equally being canvassed, we want to bring this matter more decisively to the public discourse. Where need be, we will take it ourselves to government offices if that can help us get coherent and believable answers on the matter of the economy, which we can then share with the citizens of Kenya. Although we want to address ourselves to the present situation, we wish to present some brief historical facts for purposes of context. This is not the first time Kenya's economy has gone to the dogs. When the National Rainbow Coalition took power in December of 2002, the economy was at its lowest. It was growing at about 1%. The World Bank, the IMF, and most bilateral lenders had cut funding for Kenya. Tourism had collapsed, the road network had collapsed, infrastructure was in tatters, corruption was at its highest as the only thriving industry in the country. There were no decent jobs for university graduates, businesses had cut costs to the bone, including a series of massive layoffs. Banks typically charged about 30% for individual borrowers seeking 30% interest for individual borrowers looking for a loan. Majority of the Kenyan masses could not easily open a bank account. Tarmac roads were impassable and being repaired with maram. Getting a telephone line was a nightmare. Those on the waiting list to get a telephone line at that particular period in time were estimated to be in the range of 500,000 customers. But NARC did not set about writing a book of lamentations about how bad the situation was. NARC did not set about telling people how bad the situation in the country was. The people were already feeling that the situation was bad. Instead, the new regime set about programs to ensure that the people started benefiting from the electoral victory. Within months of coming to power, the NARC government presented the country with a result-based program of priority government actions designed to meet the medium-term objectives of economic recovery strategy for wealth, employment, and creation. I will let my brother Enoch Wambua proceed from there.
Thank you. To address the economic stagnation, NARC targeted the strengthening of the microeconomic framework. They unveiled a more responsible fiscal policy. They unleashed the private sector to participate in investment, particularly in the productive sectors, and especially in infrastructure development and maintenance. To improve equity and reduce poverty, NARC unveiled a program focused on universal free primary education, improved access to basic health, expanded productive capacity in agriculture, and the development of the then overlooked arid and semi-arid areas of the country. The Rainbow Coalition further focused on upgrading the living conditions of urban dwellers through the slum upgrading program. To enhance governance, Rainbow embarked on far-reaching reform of the judiciary, a strengthening of the rule of law and security, improvement in the prisons, police, and implementing reforms in public administration. The Rainbow Coalition shared with the country and the international community a well-spelled out plan to ensure its program could be funded in a sustainable manner. At some stage, the economic recovery strategy investment activities were revised and reprioritized, and implementation costs brought down from Kenya shillings 706 billion as originally indicated to Kenya shillings 340 billion. The program that Rainbow presented to the country spelled out priority programs, identified key activities within each program, provided budgetary estimates and financing gaps within the overall resource envelope, laid out the implementation timetable, and committed to a set of monitorable targets. A prioritization workshop was held where all the activities in the logical framework of the program were prioritized in line with the sector objectives. The Rapid Result Initiative was launched. It is these sets of government organization that quickly made Kenyans be polled as the most optimistic people in the world upon the arrival of the NARC administration. Within the first 3 months, NARC's promise of free national primary education had taken off. Prison reforms had taken off. Anti-corruption measures were in place. Reforms to the judiciary were in place. A code of ethics for public service was in place. By the end of 2003, an economy that was growing at less than 1% had picked up to 1.3%. By 2004, the economy grew by about 4.3%, then shot up to 5.8% in 2005. I'll let my colleague continue from there.
I thank you. Without much coercion and drama, the Kenya Revenue Authority began to report a significant increase in tax collection. A prolonged era of low interest rates followed, allowing Kenyans to get bank loans and change their lives. For the cabinet, former President Kibaki assembled an impressive team of reformers who had the ability to turn around the economy and the institutions that had suffered as a result of neglect and corruption. Let's end the history there and turn to the present situation. There is no doubt the economy is in bad shape, but there is also no doubt that it is not worse than what the Rainbow Coalition inherited in 2002 and turned around in a matter of months. Today, months after Kenya Kwanza came to power, day in, day out, we are bombarded how badly things were when the Kenya Kwanza regime took over. William Ruto never tires of telling us how President Uhuru Kenyatta ruined the economy and ruined the country. It does not seem to matter that Ruto was deputy president that entire period. It doesn't seem to occur to him that he found the State House budget pegged at 4 billion shillings, which he increased to 9 billion shillings ostensibly for tea and mandazi. He has introduced offices hitherto unheard of in public service, including prayer warriors called intercessors, office of the first daughter, and office of the spouse of the prime cabinet secretary. Rigathi Gachagua keeps threatening to name officials in Uhuru Kenyatta's government who looted the country. After campaigning on a promise that they would stop the borrowing spree, the Ruto regime is on even a worse borrowing spree. Last Saturday, it was reported that Ruto is seeking 7.6 billion in loans from 76.6 billion in loans from foreign banks. Kenya's public debt hit 9.145 trillion in December, against the allowed limit of 10 trillion shillings, leaving President Ruto's administration with little room to borrow. The shilling is officially exchanging at all-time low of about 127 shillings to the dollar, translating to over 24% depreciation since March 2020. But many banks and foreign exchange bureaus are quoting as high as 137 shillings as the dollar becomes scarce. We do not pay cabinet secretaries or principal secretaries to tell us how bad things are. Kenyans know that already. We do not pay government to tell us where and how things went wrong and who is responsible. We do not pay this administration to supply us with morticians, deniers, and revisionists, which is what we seem to have every day. Honorable Lord, in January.
In January, are we okay? In January, Professor Ndung'u warned Kenyans of tough economic times ahead as energy and food costs saw an inflation rages in the fallout from the war in Ukraine. During campaign, Ruto said Ukraine war had no effect on Kenya. On Tuesday, Nation quoted Njuguna Ndung'u once again saying, "From all the things we have analyzed, 2023 is not looking good. There are clear signals that is going to be a tough year and that the global economy is one example in terms of where we are going." Ndung'u asked Kenyans to brace for a new round of belt tightening as the new Kwanza administration moves to stabilize its finances. He did not say when. As electricity prices have continued to soar, David Ndii, the chairperson of Ruto's Council of Economic Advisors, turned around and claimed that the Kenya Kwanza regime never promised Kenyans cheap electricity. Yet, we know countries that have cheaper power than Kenya and do not experience outages. Given the foregoing, we wish to be clear as follows. As Kenyans, we pay administrators to solve our problems, not collate and highlight them. Our question to William Ruto, Gachagua, the team at the National Treasury, and the so-called Council of Economic Advisors are as follows. When are things going to get better? When will the shilling stop falling and losing to other currencies? When will the shortage of dollar end? When will the prices of essential commodities come down? I will let my colleague continue from there.
What is the plan? Can the plan be shared with Kenyans? We are concerned that the timelines keep changing. In the beginning, Kenyans were told costs would come down as soon as Ruto put the Bible down. After being sworn in, since putting the Bible down and prices refusing to come down, Kenyans were told fertilizers had been bought, still prices refused to come down. Then we were told Kenya has licensed GMO foods, still prices refused to come down and the economy refused to pick up. Then we were told to wait for 6 months. Each time the months arrive, the goalpost shifts again. We want answers, and if they do not come in the next few days, we'll have no option but to lead our supporters into these offices for answers. We will follow these officers anywhere and everywhere for answers and not warnings. You should be aware that we even have junior secondary, which is having teething problems. In many of the schools, there's no learning, there's no teaching. Many of the schools, they only have a single teacher who is unable to even assemble the lessons. The questions are, did we take over power without a plan?
Thank you very much, Thank you very much, my colleagues. I wanted to say, members of the media, that what we are doing here today, we are going to be addressing you more regularly on topical issues touching on the welfare of Kenyans. And we are going to be doing this from here, Orange House, and also from the offices of our member, Azimio, One Kenya coalition political parties. But basically, just to add on the statements that have been read, is to say that from policy, regulatory, and legislative point of view, that there is nothing, there is absolutely nothing that is going on in this government. Zero. We have just gone through supplementary estimates in Parliament, and I know most of you have the details. There was nothing in that supplementary budget that pointed out to the direction of a government that is trying to lift Kenyans from bottom to up. Again, we are going through budget policy statement right now. Again, in that document, there's zero. There's nothing pointing to the direction that there's a government that is keen on improving the welfare of Kenyans in the areas that they cite in churches. So what we are saying, what we are telling Kenyans is that we are worse off. We have never been worse off the way we are worse off today. And therefore, our message is that we are not going to wait, and Kenyans should not wait. We are tired, and we have to take the responsibility of taking care of ourselves as Kenyans. And lastly, before you bring up your questions, you know, there's this debate that is going on in the country about the expenditures of the previous regime, and the expenditure and how they were occasioned and how they happened. And I have seen that a constitutional office, the office of the Controller of Budget, is trying to run away from responsibility. And I think this is dangerous, because that office was given the mandate of the independence mandate. That office was not supposed to be managed by anybody. In fact, Kenyans put faith in that office to help us check the excesses of a rogue government. Therefore, I want to urge the Controller of Budget that you have to take responsibility for those expenditures, because we are not going to allow you to say that you are forced. You have the tenure of office and independence of the office, so you have to take responsibility. Secondly, the misuse or use of Article 223 in the Constitution is not something which is isolated. And actually, if you look at the records of expenditures since Mr. Ruto took over the reins of power, you will realize that they have spent more resources using Article 223 than even what was spent previously. And more importantly, that the resources they have spent have been spent on useless things like, you know, prayers, interdenominational prayers, you know, setting up offices, useless offices. You know, the deputy, Mr. Gachagua has spent more resources than any other officer. And you know, the value he has to this government is zero. The only value he has got this government is dowering. I've said this before. So what we are saying is that this article is being abused by this regime. And they cannot turn around and say that it is the previous regime. In fact, the previous regime, the items listed are actually developmental items. Monies were spent on essential services that actually were benefiting Kenyans at that particular time. Thank you very much.
Do you have questions?
Aya, asante sana. Tuchukue maswali tafadhali. Yes, Luke.
Yes, I have one question, not very much related to...
Please, let's start with the ones that are related to the statement, then we will come to yours.
Maybe you can take note and then you answer it
yes,
later.
Yeah, just let the others ask and then we'll take yours. I know what you want to ask me.
Any other person? Gatete?
That means the statement was comprehensive. People don't have any questions. I like that.
Bwana SG,
Yes.
Gatete from Citizens.
Yes,
A
Gatete.
question. You've not given us the timelines. You're just saying if the government does not do this within a few days, we are going to mobilize our supporters to go to these offices.
These answers are urgent, Gatete. We have said that the government needs to come out and tell us and tell Kenyans that they have a plan for any of these things that we are addressing. We are tired of people, over-articulating the problem. As we have said, we have seen previous governments that arrived that were prepared on day one to tackle the problems of Kenyans. These matters cannot wait any longer because we represent people here in Nairobi, across the country. Kenyans are suffering. All they want to know is a plan. And every time we are told, oh, 6 months, oh, 1 year, and the goalposts keep shifting. What we are saying is, if we as the representatives of the people have been unable to extract a plan from these people, from the so-called government of Kenya Kwanza, we will take our people to Professor Ndungu's office so that he can explain to Kenyans what the plan is in terms of economic recovery. We don't want people to continue threatening to name individuals who have looted Kenyan money. If you have the names, call a press conference like this and tell Sifuna took 10 million. We have sent the details to the DCI and to the ESCC, the accountability agencies. Let them do the investigations because even Kenyans want to know. But we cannot have a government of lamentations. They don't have any plan. Every time they come, they tell us about the previous regime. The Kenya Kwanza administration, if it is an administration, must now start accounting for its time. For its time, for the time that you've been in office up to today. We have shown you by way of examples what the NARC government did in a matter of months. These characters who impose themselves on Kenyans, they have no plan. That's what we are saying.
And maybe to add on that, Gatete, maybe to add on that. No, this issue of Kenyans being reminded all the time that somebody took money, somebody did what they did. As you pursue that line, which is okay. If somebody stole money, then go for those people. But as you do that, tell us what you're doing with the money that you're collecting now. Because you're collecting money now. Yeah, you're collecting money now. When you came into power, by whichever means you did, the previous government had subsidies for basic commodities. You lifted those subsidies. What are you doing with that money? We need to see you doing something, not always complaining. Thank you.
Okay, any other question?
Mheshimiwa, when Mheshimiwa was talking about the control of budget, I had Mheshimiwa Oluoch calling for her resignation. Maybe you can clarify that.
We will address matters in the statement first. There are no more questions. Can we come to...
SG, very quickly. John from KBC.
Yes, John.
Once again, timelines. You've said few days. What are we looking at when we talk about days?
You are aware that there are various programs that are going to be announced by the coalition. Part of that program will be announced tomorrow.
Right.
Yes. Look, now I think we are done with the statement. Let's hear yours. I'm sure ni mambo ya maandamano.
Yes, maybe what Kenyans are expecting, because the 14-day ultimatum is lapsing tonight. What should Kenyans expect tomorrow?
Yes, we were with Baba at the Senate yesterday, and he spoke to the media and told you to be patient. There will be a media address similar to this one tomorrow to set out the next course of action that we will be taking as a coalition. So I believe that's the end of it.
Now this one, Vincent Oduor from NTV.
Yes, Vincent.
We know the deadline is elapsing to today midnight, and yesterday there were reports that an emissary was sent by President Ruto to try and set up a meeting with the former President Uhuru Kenyatta, and the former president flatly refused, and they used his cousin Kungu. I don't know if
where are you getting that, because I don't think any one of us here is aware of what you are discussing.
It was an exclusive information that I had. I don't know if you guys are aware of, or
in fairness to us, allow us to answer things that are within our knowledge.
But from that point of view, are you,
Vincent?
Is there anything coming from the other side with regards to the deadline?
Vincent, we will be speaking to the country tomorrow as the Azimio coalition upon expiry of the deadline to set out the next course of action. Is there any other question? Yes. No, it's okay. We can go the whole day if you want.
Thank you. There's no coalition which when you won an election, some of your members, we are seeing them going to State House, and there is an allegation some of the money they are paid is the money which is coming from Texas. What's your take on that, and what are you going to do with that? Because if that's true, then the petrol is just within
we
the
will
coalition.
discuss that matter at another opportunity. I have told you we are back at Chungwa House. We will be giving briefs of meetings of the party, the coalition, at regular intervals, and I'm sure these matters will be addressed. For now, Kenyans want to know if this government has a plan to reduce the price of unga at least to the 100 shillings that Uhuru left. Hapo ndio tuko. Asanteni sana, Mungu awabariki.